we are trying to save the environment in a radical and effective way.
Sometimes it's necessary, man. I mean, like, you don't gotta tell me twice.
Yeah, you don't like sign up for riots. Let's go.
I was like, are we in a cult right now? Like, how do they not see that this is weird?
Right, like those are the red flags.
Vibes.
And they're like, the parents are like so proud, and it's to the point where even like the religion is deep into it, because the priest is like, it's a sin, or it was like, it's wrong for you to care about animals this much, like care about animals more than humans or equal to humans, because animals don't have souls, which is incorrect. But it's like this whole thing. I was like, have you ever seen All Dogs Go to Heaven?
Do you know we have souls? You know what I mean? It's just like
what even is a soul?
You don't even know what a soul is. Animals can have it. Jesus Christ. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Gabe.
And we're
the Ghouls next door. Talking about spooky stuff.
You know, as we do.
As we be doing. And we're talking about eco-horror in our media literacy show that talks about the real life, historical, and ecological reasonings behind our cinematic fears. And they're very real, and it makes you afraid, and also it's going to make you very angry. I hope this episode makes you angry, and also empowered, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly like... I really just loved how this lady in the film is like presented as if she's some like kind of crazy person, but also like everything she's saying is real. And I love that like she's seen at the end of it, spoilers, as a hero, you know.
She does.
She's doing
I think it's astrology that seems crazy to me. Like, where she's like, I can tell when you're gonna die because of where the stars were. Like, that can't say I believe, but all the other stuff, solid, checks out.
Yeah. I believe in the moon stuff because we're made of water, so it makes sense that we would be affected by the moon cycles.
Die.
Yeah, that one I don't know.
When you were born, kind of thing. That I don't get. Like active, like what's happening with the space right now? Yeah. What happened years ago? No. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna affect today. Anyway. Neither here nor there. We're talking about Spoor, which is a Polish eco-horror film. Or eco-thriller.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not really horror. It
wasn't especially scary.
Thriller, serial killer, that kind of thing.
Murder mystery.
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo.
Real Scooby-Doo, real whodunit. Yeah. And it is, like I said, Polish, and I am loving Polish films. I'm having a good time.
We've had some winners lately, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Lore, the name of the director was Agnieszka, and the name of the director for this film is Agnieszka. But they are different. They're not the same person. But I was like, I like that name. And as a Polish person, I'm like, do I want it? No, I don't think I'll name my spawn Agnieszka, but...
Still a cool name.
Only because I can't really spell it unless I look. So I don't want to do that to my kid. So we're going to talk about Spoor, which is really interesting, very long, but charming in some ways and stressful in others. It was recommended to us by Sarah Mueller of Cinespeak, which is a local organization here in Philadelphia that does screenings and also has a periodical that I write for every now and again, and all kinds of other things. Sarah's amazing. And when she heard I liked eco-horror, she was like, check this out. Yeah. And I was like, okay, it's on the list. And then when we were picking eco-horror, it went right onto it.
Nice. We did it. Champions.
Done. Okay. You want me to go now?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. So, Spoor from 2017 is about Janina Duszewsko, An elderly woman lives alone in the Kladsko Valley, where a series of mysterious crimes are committed. Dushejko is convinced that she knows who or what is the murderer, but nobody believes her, and it's directed by Agnieszka Holland and Kasia Adamek, who's the collaborating director, and Agnieszka's daughter, which I thought was cute. Especially because this film is incredibly feminist. It's like, I saw somewhere it dubbed as an eco-feminist film, and I was like, yeah. And the earth is feminine. Like a Mother Earth, that kind of thing. I was like, yeah, all the feminines in there. Femme presenting as it is. So that was fun. It was a little fun fact. I wanted to start this section by saying that I think we can all agree that Poison Ivy is not really a villain. Yes. Poison Ivy from the Batman world. She is an environmental activist. And in a world with a city like Gotham that's full of like creeps and larger-than-life characters that are intent on selfish, greedy, evil things, Poison Ivy is a hero. I mean, honestly, a lot of them are kind of sad. There's like ones that I feel really bad about, like, Mr. Freeze or whatever. That's just our failed healthcare system. Yeah. It's him, right? So, but Poison Ivy's not really a villain. So, and, Bane, our incarceration system right there. Like, but there's a lot of them. Can't get in. Crooked cops, dime a dozen. All right? Yeah. Mafia men, anarchists that aren't even really anarchists, whatever. That's my honest opinion. And this film is Poison Ivy to me.
Yeah, I agree. Eco-terrorism for the win.
Yeah, it is eco-terrorism where we are trying to save the environment in a radical and effective way.
Sometimes it's necessary, man. I mean, you don't gotta tell me twice.
Yeah, you don't sign up for riots. Let's go. This film, it's rare for me to be like, okay, murder is okay sometimes. But this film made me think that. So, as a vegetarian, as an animal lover, as someone who is like deep into eco horror and just like traumatized by what we're doing to the environment and how little time we have here, and absolutely frustrated at the people in power for being ignorant to it, and like making us feel guilty for having plastic bags when we have entire corporations that are shipping off their used plastic to other countries so they end up disposing of it and so we don't look bad. Like, anyway, all of those things makes me feel like Poison Ivy is very valid, and so is the character in this film that I'm going to tell you about. So this eco-noir, I will say, features a serial killer stalking the small town of Kladsko Valley and killing off local men. It's eco-feminist. I'm kidding. It's also not like misandry. Misandric. I don't know what the proper tense of that is, but it's not, there's no misandry. It's not like I hate men. There's good men in this film. That's what I'm trying to say. Bad men are being killed off. These men are far from innocent. They have committed many murders themselves. Those murders were of animals and local wildlife, but it's still murder, especially because they're poachers. They're doing it off season and excessively, and they're also misogynist, and they're holding the rural village hostage to their whims, and it's regardless of any laws. And there's something strange about this particular killer in that you wonder, could it be an animal taking revenge on these evil men?
Yeah, and I agree with it is murder because of the fact that we share the genes of other creatures on this planet, which is what we talked about in Annihilation, is that we share the genetic Hox gene makeup of all the creatures on this planet. We are made up of all the things. So for us to have the audacity to be like, killing an animal in a really brutal and disgusting way, that's not murder. It's like, nah, it still is, though. It still is. Just, you don't know what's inside their brains. Yeah. You assume you know. Everyone's... It's like, what makes me want to yell, but I'm not going to.
It's one of like the you can't really tell if someone's going to be a serial killer you know? But there's like
Yeah.
those very few things that a lot of them have in common, and oftentimes it's like killing animals at a young age. And I'm like, why do we think that there's an age limit to that being a red flag?
Yeah.
because like I get like some of them that like will hunt deer or whatever because there's like overpopulation, or they're trying, like there's some point to that there's control and there's reason for it. Or if you're treating it like indigenous peoples where you're using every piece of it and you're paying respect to it, you're saying thank you, also totally okay. But there's like these specific ones, and a lot of like just poachers who are doing it for kicks, or just doing it to feel some kind of power, and that's a red flag. That is very scary to me, and I don't know why we think that it's okay to just be like, they're older now, so it's not like, I would feel uncomfortable. I'd be like, if you can kill this pig who can feel pain and has exhibited that it does understand it and is smarter than dogs, then how can I be sure you can't kill me? Like, I do not feel safe around you.
It's a very, I think it ties into like that whole wanting to have power over something else, and that a lot of the most deplorable acts that humans commit stem from that. That it all correlates, and I agree with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's like the people who like kill bears, and you're like, for why? Like, what are they? They do nothing. You're not going to eat it. It's just because you want to say you killed a grizzly bear. Like, big whoop. It's gross. People kill lions. Like, why? Anyway, it's so great. And like they take pictures, like the trophies. I can't. I feel like in Ace Ventura, the first one?
Yes.
The one where he gets in the room and it's full of it, and you're just like,
yes.
And it's
like a reasonable
response.
It's a reasonable response.
Because the first one's very transphobic. We're not going to talk about that one. But the second one, Call of the Wild or whatever, Nature Calls, that's a good one. And that one has all the animals and the little trash baby. And he's holding on to it and it falls. I was like, I'd also go to a monastery. Anyway, come back from my tangent. There's a murderer on the loose. And this film is adapted from Olga Tokarczuk's. I'm really sorry. Takarzyk's novel, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, which is now being added to my ever-growing eco-horror to-read list on Goodreads. It is very large right now. Every time I keep getting advertised, they're like, top 10 eco-horror books. I was like, all of them. Put them in there. I'm ready.
Yeah.
1 second. I want to see something.
That's its own form of activism, too, and I'll get to that in my section. But, like, that's important, and it's good that you do that.
Thank you. The film's Polish title is Poachers, which refers to the traditional ritual ending of a group hunting expedition. It's a count of the slaughtered animals. So it's like, we finished the thing, and it's like, men get slaughtered in this movie, and we're kind of counting them up. While Spoor derived from Dutch, it means the track or scent of an animal, and both of them work for what's going on. Although I kind of like the Poachers because that's like one of those things where it's like words in other languages that we don't have a word for. This film follows Duszeko, a woman who lives in a quaint little area of Poland with her dogs, and she is upset by these neighbors who hunt constantly. Like, it's nonstop. They're always doing it. And there's also like a fox farm, and I don't know what you do with foxes, but they're like crying. Like, she passes it like every day and they're crying. So that doesn't put it into perspective how messed up this place is. Throughout the film, we get these like title cards for each season, which shows like this little representation of which animals are up on the chopping block. But it's made very clear that the hunters don't actually care what's allowed. They're just killing whatever's around, and a lot. It's so excessive. It's really gross. Like, that's not how that works. Because, that's just not how that works.
It's for sport, not for necessity. That's the problem inherently.
Exactly. Geez, where am I? Okay. We see many of the wildlife that Poland has to offer in this film, from boars, deer, foxes, like I said. And we also learn about special insects that live there, and only there, meaning that this plot of land should be protected. It should be deemed a sanctuary so that specific type of insect can spawn and create more of them because they're at risk because they don't exist anywhere else. And I found myself wondering if there were any game wardens around to enforce the laws. But this really seemed like a lawless land of obscene animal murder. So if there is a game warden in Poland, I don't think the one that was in this town cared, which is sad. In our heroine, I was reminded of Raga from The Seer and the Unseen, that we covered. We talked to the director of, and Sarah Dosa. Is a new film out at Sundance. And Raga was an environmental advocate who spoke for the hidden people of Iceland. And Duszejko was speaking for the animals of Poland. So similar in that way. And when they were injured or died, you could see the emotional toll it took on her, that it seemed like she died with them every single time. And throughout the film, we get to know Duszejko in her little town. We meet the hunters, and we learn that abuse doesn't stop at the animals and that justice isn't available for anyone on two legs or four, because they're abusive to the women in the town, and there's clearly manipulation and who controls the police and all of those things, and who's really protecting who. And it's also a small town, so everyone kind of knows each other, and everyone seems to hate her, but she does find comfort in her misfit band of friends, including a neighbor who has a dark past and a growing affection for her, a struggling young shopkeeper who's in a sticky situation, and a techie with a hidden disability who is full of charm, and also a quirky, equally nature-obsessed entomologist. And they become her tribe, pretty much throughout the thing. So like I said, only one of those is a fellow lady. So it's not all men, but it's most of the men in this town. So she's half of the story is her developing these relationships and kind of finding a tribe, finding people who care about things like she does, or appreciating nature in the way that she does. And the other half is this murder mystery, because slowly these evil hunters are conveniently dropping like flies. And Duszejko offers a reasonable explanation for this, saying that the animals are having their revenge. Right? So she saw that there were deer hoof prints at one of the scenes of one of the deaths. There was pheromones from that special beetle found on another victim. Yeah. Right? And the very same men who are abusing and attacking the natural world were the ones being attacked. So she's like, this is nature coming back. Why aren't you listening? And everyone's like, whatever. She's dismissed. And the hunters just continue to be killed off, and also to continue to kill. She even informs the detective of events that she found online in which bees strategically attacked someone, and other instances of animals being put on trial for murder, which, if we have time, I will tell you some of those cases. At some point, when she's telling those and she's stressed out, and you really do start to care for her, and she's been through a lot, you might even believe her, because obviously the deer aren't killing, but to some degree it's have they evolved? Is there something going on? But then it becomes really troubling when we realize that Duszejko may have been the last person to see each of these men alive, and she also happens to have new knowledge of the effects of certain pheromones from her friendship with the friendly entomologist, and she has a motive in the form of her missing and presumed dead puppies that we saw at the beginning and went missing, and we were all pretty sure were murdered by the hunters. At one point, she even asks about it, and they say if they didn't have a collar on, they can legally be shot.
That's insane. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gross. That's you can say anything about hunters that you want, but that's a limit, right? That's a threshold that a lot of people wouldn't want to cross, right? That's someone's pet's a dog. That's, people aren't on board with dogs being murdered. That's gotta be the biggest, that's a big red flag. I don't, Anyway, this town and the hunters have such little respect for not only animals but also other humans, and there's a disgusting misogynistic element that plays into making Dusheko seem more like an anti-hero than an outright villain. She is caring and unassuming, and each of these hunters makes the grave mistake of not taking her seriously, going so far as to manhandle her in some scenes, like aggressively, because she's like freaking out at them and they're just like, letting her go. So in an LA Times article called Spoor Review, Agnieszka Holland Unleashes an Eco-Feminist Heroine by Katie Walsh, the writer explains the reverent feminism and unique perspective in an older female heroine single-handedly fighting the patriarchy. And she says, however, in respect due, this is the kind of film that could never have been made by men. Korzik and Holland give us an older female heroine driven by mysticism, astrology, legend, and her primal personal connection to plants and animals, ancient feminine ways of knowing that are scoffed at by men. She fights back against this bloodthirsty, exploitative patriarchy, which often seems futile, but as bodies pile up mysteriously, surrounded by insects and animal tracks, it seems like nature is on her side. And I completely agree with that, because there's so much about it that is, it really kind of felt like she was very, like you're saying, like she was seen as crazy and like scoffed at, but there is a strength in the fact that she is this older woman who like completely exists on her own, and she takes care of everything on, like she lives in her little house and she's got a garden and she like understands nature and she could exist on her own, and that's like super strength right there, and like an empowered existence, versus these like flimsy men who get their power off of hurting others. And I think it was like kind of beautiful. And I also found some interesting notes about the director and Olga Tokarczuk, the author of the novel, about the reception in their country. And so on NPR, titled Polish Thriller Spoor is a Pulpy Murder Story and a Utopian Fable by John Powers, they explain, now 72, Holland left Poland 40 years ago after her films were harshly censored by the Communist Party, beginning a remarkable career in the West that includes everything from Holocaust films to Henry James adaptations to episodes of The Wire. And despite her Nobel, she got a Nobel Prize, or Nobel, some kind of award for her writing. Tokarczuk is hugely controversial in her home country for speaking out against the current Polish government run by the nativist, overtly authoritarian law and justice party. And that only strengthens the story about one woman against a monumental patriarchal force of power. Again, making her the hero. So it's like she is doing it. And I think the fact that you don't really suspect her through the majority of the film. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of like, I mean, like, a part of me is like, it's very convenient. But she is so unassuming, and there's like a part where she's even like gonna turn herself in for a different crime to like save a friend, and they just dismiss her. They're like, no. Like, we know that's not what you would do. And then at some point it's just like so obvious because she's so overwhelmed, and like it's clearly indoctrinated into their community because they have the kids participating and valuing the murder of the animals, and they're like putting on a play where they're gonna be the animals that are
the
murdered.
most horrific song I've ever heard in my life. I was like, are we in a cult right now? Like, how do they not see that this is weird?
Right, like those are the red flags.
Vibes.
And they're like, the parents are like so proud, and it's to the point where even like the religion is deep into it, because the priest is like, it's a sin, or it was like, it's wrong for you to care about animals this much, like care about animals more than humans or equal to humans, because animals don't have souls, which is incorrect. But it's like this whole thing. I was like, have you ever seen All Dogs Go to Heaven?
You don't know we have souls. You know what I mean? It's just like
what even is a soul?
You don't even know what a soul is. Animals can have it. Jesus Christ. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So there's like so many levels to this very toxic town, and that it goes so deep to the point where like the only way to fight is to do this. And she can do it because people don't take her seriously. So she got away with it for a lot. And then, she goes off and has her own little utopia away from people, with people that she loves. And I was like, this is the best ending.
Yeah.
Best ending to any of these films we've ever had.
Yeah, I appreciated too the fact that she was older, because that's something that's like something I hear a lot, which is just so incorrect. I think it's more like where it's like the older you get, the more conservative. I was like, no, the older I get, the more extremely radical I become, and I just feel like she is a more accurate representation of what everyone should be turning into, instead of like becoming more because it's like, no, it's actually like you learn more about the world or you actively choose not to, and then you just double down in your things.
It's just we're only seeing these ones,
Yeah, so it's
but we forget about the free love movement and all of the like.
Yeah, like there's older people who do that and then they hide them so that you don't think that that's what actually happens. It's just
and
like,
we're forgetting Jane Fonda exists. Like they're activists. They've been activists forever, and they were out there. It's not just like red, Trump loving old people. We're all out there.
Yeah.
So I agree, and it is nice. To have her be so powerful in the end too.
Yeah.
Like when she dons her like wolf costume, I was like, okay, this is like the second time someone wore a wolf costume to murder, and it was good.
Yeah. And I mean, like, there's something like powerful about that too, in a feminist sense, in that like go ahead and underestimate. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you make that mistake once.
How quick that was an incorrect assessment, because ultimately that works to our advantage.
Mm-hmm. Also, I did love that when she goes to the costume party, she was the wolf and he was Little Red Riding Hood. That was super
Their
cute.
whole dynamic was really sweet, and I just really loved them as like
great.
friends.
And I love it. Like it was like the big reveal. So like her love interest is this old man, and his son is the detective, and so she like is talking to the detective, and he like has this big reveal to be like, you shouldn't trust my father, like you don't really know him. And she's like, why? And he's like says that he was arrested for terrorism, but it was because he was like gonna he was gonna bomb this facility because they wouldn't take in his wife who was dying of an illness. Like it was because of the failed healthcare system. Again, he's just Mr. But it was I was just like, it was funny to me because he says that to her like, oh, now you can't trust him, like he was a terrorist. And she's like, that's not like,
she like looks like the thing he needed to do.
To her, she was like, wow, he's an ally. Like, like I trust him. And then it turns out like he was a really great ally to have because he knows how to fight back against the oppressing powers that be and help her escape. So it turned out being really good. But I just love that there was like these two activists and they're old and they're just like, we've been fighting this whole time. We're not going to stop.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about the historical context of the fact that like World War II deeply impacted Poland and how they kind of intersected that history, I thought that was also really interesting.
Yeah.
Because at first when I saw like the bunker, I was like, why does he have that? And I was like, oh, yep.
Oh, right.
Yep. Yeah, that lots of houses have those because of the times that the World War II, that makes sense.
That's why my family came here. So they left Poland to come here because of that. So, all right, take it away.
Yeah. So, honestly, I know this isn't about a real person, but that lady was like kind of my hero. I was like, the older I get, the more radical I become. And like, I just leaned in really heavy to like that whole vibe. So this film covers a lot of heavy topics like the horrors of overhunting, the meat industry, the brutalization of animals for human benefit, and more. We see this horror represented in the overall disrespect they like people specifically like in this film and also like throughout colonialism have for other creatures of this planet and the planet itself. And this is highlighted throughout the film in a way that I think was really impactful, and I thought it was executed really well. So while we aren't shown the consequences of the human impact on a planet in any large scale way, we are shown a small sample of the damage that the brutality of humanity is capable of, as well as like the disturbing way in which that brutality and violence can be normalized under the guise of civilization and religion. That there is a system in which powers that be intentionally monsterize or demoralize or dehumanize whatever is categorized as some subhuman or not human for financial benefit. And the separation and justification of this murder and abuse done unto animals by humans with this guise that just because we think they don't have sentience, we think they don't have souls, is pretty commonplace. I think even within like American society, like I know lots of people who are like, you're upset because your cat died. Is like, yeah, it's like a part of my family, you jerk. Like, what do you mean? Of course I'm upset. Or like things like that, where it's like they really just don't, there's an inherent disrespect for animals that just stems from colonialism. And that is like really messed up. So, and it really just like spreads across this planet like a literal disease, as colonization and westernization has. The reality being that humans have reshaped this entire planet in irreparable ways that extend past the damage of any other invasive species that has ever been here. And that we've justified with euphemisms like innovation and progress. Ultimately, the movie sums up the thesis of the Ghouls quite nicely, that people are trash and that people are parasites. We forget too often that we are just also animals, creatures that live on this planet, that depend on the planet to live, just like anything else. What I really loved about this film is it really just made you root for the main character who protects the creatures that can't protect themselves by murdering the people who commit those atrocities. So as Gabe was saying, it's like a lot of times we're like, we're not pro murder. We're not. But this was an instance where you're like, I get it though. Yeah. Go ahead, you know. And while the main character is arguably like pretty strange, quirky, and somewhat unhinged, you really couldn't help but like root for her throughout the entire film. I love that the film specifically chose that angle for it, and that the whole like what was demonized was not her. Or like her little ragtag group of people. Like it was really, they were not quiet about being like, do you see what they're doing? Like these people over here that are being murdered because they should. So why was this lady so upset about the hunting in her community? There are a lot of very good reasons for this, and I did some research specifically about hunting and overhunting, and the inherent difference between hunting for survival and hunting for recreation, and how that's largely impacted the environment. There are many angles I could have taken for this episode, from how the meat industry treats the animals that we consume in mass, to the extent of the extinction that has taken place as a result. But I've chosen the latter to focus on for this episode, and hopefully we'll get to explore this topic further as we explore more eco-horror, or as we continue like just with our show in general. Essentially, hunting past the means of necessity is a disruption of our ecosystem and is devastating because of that. And it's ultimately very unsustainable. It impacts much more than just the animals when people disrupt the natural flow of nature through overhunting of the animals. Even the National Science Foundation outlines the ways in which overhunting has impacted trees and other plants in an article titled "Fruits of the Forest Gone, Overhunting of Large Animals Has Catastrophic Effects on Trees." This article specifically covers the issue within Thailand, but the information covered is applicable to any and all ecosystems in which hunting has impacted them. Overhunting of animals affects the entire forest. While the loss of these animals is concerning for species conservation, now researchers at the University of Florida have shown that overhunting can have widespread effects on the forest itself. Overhunting leads to the extinction of the dominant tree species, Melusia horsefieldi, or the Melusa beech, with likely cascading effects on the other forest biota. So the article continues to kind of outline the way in which the hunting of large animals limits the seed dispersal from the trees, and the disruption, how that impacts every area of the forest. So from impacting the literal size of the forest habitat to impacting the types of plants that can develop throughout it. Ultimately, there's this sense of urgency that exists when it comes to limiting the amount of hunting that takes place within forests and other ecosystems in order to prevent the extinction of not only the animals that depend on the habitats to live, but the trees that make up that environment. The implication being that over the next 100 years, if things do not improve, these ecosystems, the animals within them, and the plant life within them will cease to exist. And that I thought that was like a really interesting way to kind of approach the issue, that it wasn't like yes, it is horrible that these big animals are being killed, but it impacts so many other things that aren't like overtly obvious. It impacts the way the trees develop. It impacts the biodiversity of these ecosystems. So something that like seemingly seems like not like overtly like you wouldn't think about the trees when you're thinking about like a bear being murdered, but that's something that it does dramatically impact. In another article from Green Journal titled "What Effect Does Overhunting Have on the Environment?" more context is provided for that problem. While hunting has been recorded across almost all human history, there is an issue surrounding the relationship between humanity and nature that is inherently disrespectful and exploitated within colonialism as well as like our modern capitalistic society. Traditionally, hunting was intended for survival, as natives in areas throughout the world would only gather what they needed to live. During the Antiquity period before the Middle Ages, hunting evolved into a privilege for people in higher societal classes. This practice has contributed to the concept known as overhunting over the subsequent centuries. The cause is when individuals hunt outside of necessity, ultimately. When it's done as something, as it said, as a privilege, that it should be treated like a literal, like to take a life of something else is not something anyone should be taking lightly or be doing for fun. And it really is stemmed from this like class thing. So how are classes established? Money, finances. What's the cause? Capitalism. It all comes back.
Every time.
But it's like, it's one thing to hunt in order to feed oneself or clothe oneself, but it's what is taking place is like extends so far past that, and the overhunting of certain areas for sport, for like recreation, not necessity, and by companies in order to create an abundance to meet market expectations or achieve profit is what is doing the most damage. What we see as individuals hunting as a means of competition or for recreational purposes, and doing so with an inherently exploitive nature behind it. Without regulations surrounding this, we have an entire species that go extinct or ecosystems that are decimated by poachers and big business. This also extends to deforestation, the removing of trees. We remove habitats. We remove the ecosystems in which animals need to survive. So in building
like the tigers.
No, yeah, exactly. And the things that like sometimes I feel like people don't realize impact this is the fact that we build cities and we build houses that are not sustainable. We build countless things that are not sustainable. We have landfills filled with garbage that is unsustainable, and things that are intentionally made poorly in order to encourage continued participation in capitalism. The result is the decimation of trees on our planet at a faster rate than they're able to be replenished. The same applies to animals who depend on these trees to live, and the animals that are destroyed by the textile industry and the exotic animal trade. There are so many ways that capitalism, colonialism, and imperialism has transformed the landscapes in an inherently exploitative way that has landed us where we are now. An example that immediately comes to mind is the extinction of the buffalo in the US, both as a means for hurting the native populations and like making it so they weren't able to fight back, but also for profit and excess. Like we literally like America specifically drove an entire species to be extinct. It's decimated the farming in the Midwest by over-farming it that you literally can't farm there anymore. The drain and exploitation of natural resources for literal imaginary currency has destroyed this planet. So I think we should just not have money. But we knew that about me already. The article goes on to talk about the lasting implications of the ecosystems that we're destroying, as the trees and animals and biodiversity is what makes this planet hospitable for life. We need to help it in order to not destroy ourselves and everything else. Well, if we continue this way, continue to destroy, it is likely that the destruction of this ecosystem will destroy what allows for our own survival. In most cases, animals provide a service that makes the planet hospitable. Because we have biodiversity, we in turn can enjoy our agriculture systems, water sources, climate stability, oh my goodness, climate stability, and clean air. If you consider that each animal has a part in how this earth operates, you can see that extinction disrupts the entire system, leading to serious implications. Okay, so we can see this improve if we take the necessary steps to support the restoration of these ecosystems, and also just like operate in ways that do not inherently exploit and destroy them. I think the biggest piece is learning how to partner with our planet in ways that don't harm the ecosystem that we depend on for life. And Gabe had mentioned earlier when we were off the air, there's something that's like always missing in terms of a lot of the restoration attempts because they don't consult native populations in this restoration process. Before colonialism and all that happened, there were people here who were actively taking care of the land and living symbiotically with the planet and like treating it like it's an actual thing instead of this like resource thing to like exploit and destroy. And like imperialism itself is what naturally led to that, because that was the whole thing. You went to a place to steal its resources and exploit its people. And then that has just inherently motivated what all exploration has been from anyone from the Western world. And it's just super gross. But with all that to say, there are things that you can do that are small enough that like, please just start the process. And the things that come so small from this, there's a list that I'm going to give you, but one of them is just building awareness and education and using the resources you have currently to do that. So following content creators who educate on these things, follow native creators that educate on these things, follow, like, support the things you want to see more of so that we can help save the planet, man. But the list goes on. The first one is increased regulations. We need to ensure that this area is not hunted in excess and that the trees are not harvested in excess. There needs to be regulations that prevent these things and strict rules for enforcing them. So like in the movie, when she's very upset that someone has murdered her dogs unjustly, and everyone's like, why are you so upset? They aren't people. Like, no, there should be consequences for brutally murdering animals. There should be consequences for hunting, like, excessively and for sport. Like, if you are not hunting to literally survive, you should not be able to hunt. Eliminating hunting as a sport would be a good start. In my opinion, we also need to change our society from operating exploitatively, both of our populations, but also of our planet, and the shift to a more wellness-focused structure and a more symbiotic relationship. Essentially, money in its current form needs to go for us to actually make these kinds of meaningful changes. Or at least the way we operate within money and exploit money, or people for money. But the awareness and education is we need to educate our future generations of wildlife conservation and learn these things from the people who know, and living in a way that doesn't actively damage our planet. Many people don't realize that there are these issues at hand, or just ignorant of them. Providing people with practical next steps and using your platforms to educate others is a necessity and necessary step towards solving the problems. And the article also states that you should require hunters to learn about overhunting and the problems associated with it before they're even able to receive licenses, which I agree with. The last thing that's fairly easy to do is support ethical products. Put your money where what you want to see is. So that's why I was saying, Gabe, like you purchasing books that educate on eco-horror and like eco-centered thoughts, that is its own form of activism, because you're supporting the people who are doing the thing you want to see more of. As consumers, we need to back up what we want to see with our money. The article says each dollar is a vote, and that's true in a lot of ways within our current society. If we want the planet to change, we need to support organizations and companies doing that work, and people doing that work. This includes doing so with our food choices as well, when possible. So meatless Mondays and stuff, like, you know what I mean? Like, just removing the amount of meat you consume can drastically impact the damage that is done to the planet. Obviously, this is more complicated when thinking of the reality of food deserts, poverty, and the other things that decrease access to these kinds of choices. So for that, I say, like, when possible, do that. When within the current system we're in, until that system is dismantled. Even decreasing the amount of, like, products that you use that are invasive. When you're talking about the bay, making sure that you're using things that if they are taken into the water through runoff, making sure that those things are not going to actively harm the ecosystems that exist in the water. And also, it's like, when you're exploring all these things, do what you can when you can, and recognize that because of the way our system is set up, there are instances that won't be possible. And ultimately, we all need to remember who the real enemy is, and not attack each other. So if you have the means, we recommend donating to environmental organizations, supporting products that you consider good for the planet, and educate yourself ultimately, and use your time when you can to learn, sign petitions, advocate, and so on. We will always provide links and resources at the end in our show notes and what have you.
And we can also share a link to that TikTok you sent me of the just about like ecology and how we're trying to be conservationists, but we're ignoring the indigenous populations who are already doing that work, and not like in big studies considering like you should study how they've been doing it and like consider them part of the process. And because there is a respect there that we just never had. So we'll have those resources. And maybe I'll do a list of top 10 eco horror.
I think that would be great, honestly. Because, like, we ultimately, if we live in a capitalistic society, we need to put our money where our mouths are. If we have money. And if you don't, just do whatever you can in your current space. If that's donating your time, if that's literally just learning about stuff. And also just like make sure you're getting information from the right people. So like if you notice that you're only hearing from people who work at big companies or a bunch of white people, maybe change the things you like on your tickety talks or consuming in your medias so that you get sent the other stuff because it exists and it's out there. It's my long rant. I didn't expect to go on a giant capitalistic rant, but like after I got started, I was like, oh my gosh, burn the money, burn it. So that's just that's where I'm at. Yeah, I agree, and because it always comes down to that, it really does. And I think what's interesting with this film is that it kind of weaves in that because we do see like the fox farms and stuff, but it's clear that it's a societal thing, and that because society was saying it's okay, everyone else thought it was okay, and like especially seeing the indoctrination of the children into this like ideology of like we kill the animals and it's fun is a problem, and I think it was like really well told in that way. And I mean it's like also it's like you're considering like the fact that that's like something that's very real that happens, like that most oppressive systems are indoctrination based, and that we witness a lot of that within our own education systems, religions systems, and etc. And I'm not saying like don't eat meat ever in your life. If you need it to survive, do that, but don't do more than that. You don't need to be murdering a lion because you're bored and because you have money. You don't need to be the owner of Jimmy John's
on Instagram
murdering a rhino.
You
know what I mean? Like you don't need to hunt things because you think it's cool and you want to wear your pants, your khaki pants, and go be rich people in other places when you don't need to.
Roasting khaki pants.
Khaki pants and cargo shorts need to be burned. They don't actually, but that's where I'm at.
Okay.
That's what I associate with the images of gross men standing next to dead animals is usually khaki pants or cargo shorts. Sorry.
Feels like inappropriate, but I do have the animal trials. If we wanted to talk about them since we have time.
I mean, it's still like horrific and the people did that to animals, but then are going to go turn around and be like, they don't got souls, but we're going to try them
exactly, for murder, right? Like
when they get murdered
how can we
day.
have historically, like, put animals into court, but we're like, they're not people.
And let people think we're crazy. I don't even care, because if anything, that just makes them underestimate us more.
And then we murder.
I'm going to go yell at people in public. Let's go.
So I thought it was really exciting when in the film when she was like, I found these things on the internet of trials of animals, and I was like, I bet those are real and that it wasn't make-believe, and it was real. she does cite, like, there was a pig that was hanged because it had strangled and defaced a baby in its cradle. And I found this, like, this fun article on History Revealed. It's just, like, I doubt any of this is super great, but they say that multiple witnesses claimed that the pig let itself into the house and disfigured and ate the face and neck of the said child, so, like, as if it was on purpose. And the judge found the swine guilty and sentenced it to be hanged or hung. There was a time when a man sexually assaulted a donkey, and the man was sentenced.
Well, that's good.
But they made it like the donkey had participated in the event. But one witness, a character witness for the popular donkey, said that the donkey was a most honest creature. And then the court judged that it had not participated in the master's crime of her own free will, which is nice. I thought it was really interesting. So there's, like, let me see, cockerel was burned to death, weevils, unknown sentence, but they damaged a vineyard. An elephant killed a handler, and it got death by hanging. And when you think about, like, how mistreated animals, specifically elephants, have been historically,
yeah,
I think we could do that.
All
Rats
the
destroyed.
burn them down.
Rats destroyed a barley crop, but they were exonerated. Primate was a French spy, supposedly, and was hung. This one says, during the Napoleonic Wars, anything French was treated with suspicion in Britain. So after a French ship wrecked off the coast of Hartlepool and the sole survivor made it into town, the locals were concerned he was a spy, even though he was a monkey. And according to local legends, they had a trial, found it guilty, and hung him. But it could be not real. Yeah, there's 10 here. A cow pushes a woman over, sentenced to death. And then bear steals honey.
If you think about, like, okay, so person goes to zoo, falls in zoo place, zoo animal does zoo animal time, they murder zoo animal. Like, they don't even get a trial. All I'm saying is like, we're all here saying divine intervention or whatever. We're seeking this whole ridiculousness and murdering things all the time. But the second they were like, oh yeah, we're going to do it back by accident. Like, not even.
Yeah, like, they just, like, fight back because, like, oh my god, like, you're in my space. I'm just reacting.
Let's destroy the forest and then be mad that the animals are coming into the cities.
Yeah. So, like, part of me wished that it was an animal. I was kind of hoping it was, like, some evolved animal that was.
Well, the humans are, like, animals, so we're acting for.
You know what I meant.
I know what you meant. That's what I'm just saying.
Yeah. Anyway, this film was super fun. The reality of situation, not super fun.
Yeah.
Do what you can. Read up on things. Try to be more intentional. Meatless Mondays is super cool. But also just, like, being conscious of what we're putting into the earth and not doing things in excess just for kicks. That's not how you get power. That is a red flag.
Yeah.
So everyone out there, if you date someone and they say they're a hunter, like, drop them. Yeah. You need to make it uncool.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, it's like, you think about, like, the areas in which, like, there's things you can do and there's things that you can't. So, like, there are times when this is going to happen, and we're not going to, like, help each other by, like, messing somebody up because they use invasive hair products or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, the real enemy is Jeff Bezos. The real enemy is the billionaires that have been actively exploiting the planet this whole time. So, like, make sure, like, obviously call people out when they do something wrong, but.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I think that's a big thing too, is, like, we can reduce our carbon footprint, but there's a much bigger carbon footprint coming from the larger corporations. And that doesn't mean you can't do your part. It just means, like, when they're trying to make us feel bad, don't.
Yeah, like, don't listen to
realize
them.
that it's them we need to
literally
change.
Exploitation and them manipulating you. So
yeah, we need more sustainable practices all around, and incorporate different cultures and understandings of the environment into our studies and the way that we are trying to protect it to best serve it. Right? Like, why not?
Yeah.
Anyway,
if you're upon a capitalism, deprogram yourself. If you're a pawn of
Yeah.
any oppressive system, deprogram yourself. It is the key to happiness. And also knowledge. So do those things if you can.
Yeah.
That's my little rant of the
Thank
day. My
you.
one ear is like super red compared to the other one, and I don't know why.
That's true.
It's warm. You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
It's a short episode for a long film. But I feel like with, we have one more episode left in our eco horror and then we're going to change it up. But if you have any suggestions or thoughts about eco horror, if you're reading a really rad book that you want me to put onto my to be read on Goodreads, let me know. If there's a film that you think would be interesting to cover, like if we want to come back to this topic, which we probably will because there's always eco horror out there, let us know. And remember to like and subscribe. You can email us at theghouls.nextdoor@gmail.com, and everywhere on social media you can comment on things. We respond. We're small enough that it's not the worst thing in the world.
And also, like, if you're out here doing the work and you want your platform amplified, let us know. And if
absolutely.
we don't already know about you, we want to. So tell us so we can send people your way.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right, well, don't get married.
Relate your kids. Hopefully our kids are radical too.
They are going to be radical.
Radical spawn.
Unless they want to like rebel against us, so they just become pawns.
It's like my biggest fear.
It's like,
because you want to do the thing your parents not doing,
man.
but like when you're like, I'm like, oh no. What if they're like, Mom, capitalism's great? And I'm like, it's not. Who raised you? Me?
It couldn't be.
My spawn.
No. Well, I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so.
I think they're going to think the environment's great.
Your influence, my influence, Isaiah's influence, everyone else. It's gonna end up just fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, bye.